there's a riot and the riot gets very explosive, the head of state has to run away. The first question that you ask is, why did this riot take place? Was it because the people were young? Well, there are young people everywhere. It has to be something else. Basically, the fact that people are jobless. Many of the workers in India are part-time employees. They work 4 months a year. They're in agriculture. But do remember, this literacy figure conceals a lot. Anybody in India who can read or write his name is considered literate. Unemployment, education and poverty are big drivers to create the groundswell. Hi, this is RN Bhaskar from Bhaskar Ki Business Baatein. We bring to you policy analysis every week, sometimes a conversation, and occasionally a business story. Today we are going to talk about policy. Policies that governments must adopt to prevent a riot. And the immediate provocation is the riots that we saw just now in Nepal. What happened in Nepal? Students went on a rampage, and papers said it was Gen Z protesting. Protests, whenever they take place anywhere in the world, is always Gen Z. Is always the young. But something provoked the young to go on the streets and demand a change. And if you look at what happened in Nepal, it's not very different from what happened in Bangladesh recently, where the government had to run away. Nepal, the government ran away. Bangladesh, it ran away. In Sri Lanka, it ran away. And this is what happens whenever there's a riot and the riot gets very explosive, the head of state has to run away. The first question that you ask is, why did this riot take place? Was it because the people were young? Well, there are young people everywhere. It has to be something else. And then you realize the causes are many. And the causes begin with basically the fact that people are jobless. Unemployment is a big driver to make the young protest. And when people are jobless, things can happen, anything can happen. You need food for your family. You need food for yourself. And look at this chart. This chart tells you how unemployment works in various countries in 2020 and 2024. And some of the figures can be misleading, like in India. We have a low unemployment compared to other countries, but that is because many of the workers in India are part-time employees. They work 4 months a year. They're in agriculture. They've not got any other gainful employment. They can't even leave agriculture because there's no other job available. The second factor is education. Education allows you to migrate. If today I can't get a job in this sector, I can try getting a job in some other sector. Education gives me mobility. Education allows me to remove the inequalities that are there in society. Look at this chart on education. Once again, India appears to be comfortable at 70% literacy. But do remember, this literacy figure conceals a lot. Anybody in India who can read or write his name is considered literate. So if your name is Ram and you know the 3 letters R-A-M, you are literate. It doesn't matter if you don't know the other alphabets. Without good education at the school level, you become unemployable. You may have done your graduation, but you're not fit for employment. India's biggest problem is not unemployment, it's unemployability. And that is because they have the certificates, but don't have the skills that the certificates require. The third factor is poverty. The poorer a person, the more likely he is to go out in the streets and protest. Look at the poverty figures. Again, the poverty figures can be misleading because governments consider free food to have reduced multidimensional poverty. Look at the money people have. And these figures are on the basis of the World Bank's figure that $5 a day is the threshold for being considered poor or not poor. In the developing world, $2 a day is good enough. But anyway, leave that aside. So the three things that are there, unemployment, education and poverty, are big drivers to create the groundswell. They keep the powder dry. To ignite the powder, you need a spark. And the spark is provided by some other factors. One of the factors is the freedom of expression. In Nepal, they stopped social media and the youth erupted. At places, journalists are killed. Look at the chart. The largest killing fields are there in Israel. But India is among the top 10. Journalists are killed in India. When journalists are killed, you're stopping the freedom of expression. When social media is banned, you kill expression. And when you bring in controls on various forms of media, you are again trying to kill freedom of expression. You can stop it for some time, but sooner or later, there's a vacuum. The vacuum gets filled with fake news or, as it happened in Nepal, a riot. There are two other factors. Communalism. When you divide communities, you are on the verge of a civil uprising. Look at what's happening to Israel. In Israel, the hatred against the non-Jews is so great that they went to war. They started killing. And today, they're guilty of genocide. What was the result? The Israeli government has collapsed. By 2024, as John Mearsheimer says, 500,000 Israelis opted to leave Israel. And the people who leave are the brightest and the best.
The sort of long-term future of Israel is in question for a lot of reasons, many of which I have not touched on tonight for time-related reasons. But you want to understand that immediately after October 7th, 500,000 Israelis left the country.
Even now, another 500,000 could be willing to leave. But Israel has closed its borders. So even though Israel is being pounded by bombs, nobody can leave Israel without government sanction. Israel has a population that does not want to be in Israel now. The Jews want out. What is worse? The state finances have collapsed. And the states and the country's finances are in such dire straits because it has spent on war that today there is no money left. Israel is almost bankrupt, bailed out constantly by the United States. Even the condition of the United States, which also has practiced and adopted and supported genocide, is terrible. Genocide, hatred of communities, eventually leads to the destruction of the country. India has to be careful. Look at what's happening in Manipur. Wild remarks. And remember, these are border states. It's easy for a border state to erupt into riots because they can run away into the forest across the border and come back again, create trouble, run back again. Never trouble a border state too much. Freedom of expression is also curbed by internet shutdowns. And India is a big player when it comes to internet shutdowns. And finally, there's one factor which nobody likes, and that is corruption. India's corruption, as the chart will tell you, has increased. If you don't stop corruption, you destroy society. I have a very good example of how one country escaped a riot. Remember Iran, which erupted into riots, and Shah Pahlavi Reza was forced to leave the country, and Khomeini became the head of the state. Khomeini was very well aware that the people who rioted were young people, unemployed, not well educated. And he knew that the people who rioted against the Shah could riot against him also. So he had to do something to create jobs. But America had imposed sanctions on Iran. So it looked for things that it could do without foreign exchange. It chose housing. Because housing uses mud, uses cement, uses steel, all are locally available. And uses labor, labor is also local. But who's going to purchase the houses? You need money. So Iran did something very clever. It made an announcement that every child, boy or girl, rich or poor, would get $1,000 equivalent in local currency in his or her bank account as soon as the child is born. That money could not be touched for 18 years. By the time the child became 18, the money with interest had become a large amount. The boy and girl, if they got married, could use the money, your money, my money, and we go ahead and buy a house. The money was arranged for 18 years later. 2, by giving them the money and saying that you could redeem it 18 years later, you give them hope of a better life. When you've got a better life, you don't destroy. And 3, it concentrated education and job creation. Which is why even recently, when Israel went and tried to decapitate Iran, nothing happened because the society knew that they had a future. When a society begins to realize there's no future, riots become easy. Finally, when there's corruption, that is also one of the causes. But the real cause can be any outsider who can use any of these wrongdoings in a country and instigate the crowd. Look at Bangladesh. We know who instigated Bangladesh. Overnight, Sheikh Hasina had to run away and a new head of state was adopted. The same thing is likely to happen in Nepal. The same thing happened in Sri Lanka. Who instigates? You may never know. The Ukraine riots were created in the Maidan Revolution, which people said was free, but now we know that the CIA funded the Maidan riots. The Color Revolution was funded by the CIA. It can be anybody who can fund a riot. But if you don't have the ground causes of poverty, unemployment, education, corruption, and freedom of expression, no instigation will destroy a country. That is why all countries, including India, needs to make sure that these are addressed all the time without fail. Thanks for watching this program, and I hope you liked it. If you liked it, click the like button and do remain a subscriber with us. Thanks for watching. Good luck. You'll find us now every morning at 8:15 a.m. on weekdays, where we come out with daily news, or better still, news behind the news. Do watch it.